Welcome, folks. We're living in a time where up is down, feelings are facts, and personal accountability is apparently white supremacy. The cultural left has gone so far off the rails, they're now trying to cancel basic health. You think with everything going on in the world, that Democrats would be focused on, fixing the economy or securing the border, but no. We've got activists shouting that diets are racist. Yes, you heard that right. Not diets don't work or diets are tough. Nope. They're full-blown hate crimes now. Apparently encouraging black women to take care of their health is some kind of colonial oppression. It's like every week the progressive movement spins the wheel of victimhood and somehow lands in a new food group. So buckle up, because we're diving into the ideological buffet of bad takes, where logic is starved and delusion is supersized.
Like, I hate when people talk about black women being obese. I hate it. Because it becomes a way to blame us for a set of conditions that we didn't create. We're moving, we're taking care of kids, but our food quality suffers. We are living in the Trump era. And look, those policies kill our people. You can't get access to good health care, good insurance. The research says that black women, when we do the same diets as white women, we lose less weight and we lose it slower, even when we're following the diet, than our white women counterparts. And what public health practitioners think is that our stress responses in the body change our metabolism. It's literally that the racism that you're experiencing and the struggle to make ends meet actually means the diet don't work for you the same.
Okay, Karen, put down the Twinkie and let's have a real conversation, because this resurfaced clip might be 5 years old, but the argument hasn't improved with age. If anything, it's a perfect example of how the modern left keeps recycling the same talking points, blame systems, dodge responsibility, and somehow connect everything back to Trump, even your metabolism. Now, let's start with the claim that discussing obesity in black women is a way to blame them. No, acknowledging a crisis isn't blame, it's recognition. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, 57% of black women are classified as obese. That's the highest rate of any demographic group in the United States. Compare that to 44% of Hispanic women, 39% of white women, and just 17% of Asian women. This is a serious public health concern, not a personal attack. Ignoring it in the name of sensitivity isn't compassion, it's negligence. Now, to the popular claim that diets don't work for black women the same way they do for white women, a 2012 study published in the journal Obesity did find that black women lost weight at a slightly slower rate, 8.3 pounds compared to 11.2 pounds for white women over 6 months under the same diet and exercise regimen. But here's a critical detail. Both groups lost weight, and both showed improved cardiovascular and metabolic health. The difference is about 26%, not a dead end. It's not that diets don't work, it's that progress may vary, and that's true for every human body, regardless of race. Then there's the stress and cortisol argument. Yes, chronic stress can elevate cortisol, which can contribute to weight retention, but this isn't exclusive to black women. High stress affects everyone, including white, Latino, and Asian Americans working multiple jobs or raising families. Stress isn't a uniquely racial experience, and even if it plays a role, that doesn't negate the effectiveness of diet and exercise. It just means stress management should be part of the health conversation, not an excuse to reject it altogether. Now, let's talk Trump, because apparently his presidency is responsible for people gaining weight. That's the claim. But the data tells a very different story. Under Trump, black unemployment fell to 5.4% in 2019, the lowest ever recorded. Black household income increased to $45,438 by 2019. The poverty rate for black Americans dropped to 18.8%, also the lowest ever recorded. Food stamp dependency among black Americans decreased, reflecting improved economic mobility. His administration also expanded access to short-term health plans, offering affordable alternatives to expensive ACA premiums. Now, if that's what systemic oppression looks like, it needs a new press agent. So let's move on to the food access argument. According to the USDA's Food Access Research Atlas, only about 5.6% of Americans live in a food desert, defined as low-income areas with limited access to supermarkets. And even in those areas, many communities have access to fresh produce through dollar stores, local markets, delivery services, and mobile vendors. No, it's not perfect, But the idea that millions of black women are locked in some kind of food prison with no options but Cheetos and despair is wildly overstated. And for anyone wondering what actually determines weight loss success, it's not race, it's behavior. The National Institutes of Health, the NIH, reports that self-monitoring, tracking meals, weight, and physical activity is the strongest predictor of successful weight loss, regardless of racial background. Other key factors: consistency, portion control, sleep, and physical activity. None of those are tied to skin color. They're tied to discipline and habits, which can be built with support, with tools, and yes, with cultural shifts. So let's be clear. Obesity rates are highest among black women. That's a fact. Diet and exercise do work. That's a fact. Trump's presidency saw measurable gains for black Americans. That's also a fact. Stress affects everyone. It's not exclusive to one group. Fact. Food access exists for the vast majority of Americans. Another fact. Personal accountability, not systemic blame, predicts health outcomes. Fact. Now, this isn't about shaming anyone. It's about refusing to lower the bar in the name of political narratives. Black women deserve better than to be told that their biology is broken by racism or that their health is out of control. That message might feel good in a soundbite, but it's disempowering in real life. So in order to have better outcomes, we have to focus on real solutions: education, support systems, better food literacy, and community health initiatives. So let's leave the race-based metabolism theories in the same pile as the Fat is Freedom movement: loud, viral, and completely detached from reality. And speaking of being detached from reality, Jasmine Crockett, who never seems to get enough of humiliating herself, has an enlightening message for all of us.
And then y'all want to come at us and act like people of color are the problem or that women are the problem? Like, baby, you probably need a good black woman in the room who can check you and tell you that, first of all, you shouldn't be doing this shit on Signal or anything else.
Well, it looks like Jasmine Crockett just jumped in with a kind of brain-dead deflection we've come to expect from the Democrat bench. She says, you need a good black woman in the room. No, Jasmine. What we needed was fewer people grandstanding like you and more people asking real questions like, why did a journalist from The Atlantic end up in a Signal group chat with some of the highest-ranking national security officials in the country? Spoiler alert, it wasn't because of racism or sexism. It's because someone in that chat either had an agenda or a strategy. Now let's cut through the noise. This wasn't some accidental ad. Jeffrey Goldberg doesn't just stumble into a Signal group with names like Hegseth, J.D. Vance, Tulsi Gabbard, and Marco Rubio without someone putting him in there on purpose. Whether it was sabotage or strategic signaling to adversaries, someone inside that thread wanted Goldberg to see something, either to disrupt the strike or to ensure the message got out that under Trump, America doesn't just talk about defending its interests, we strike first. And guess what? That's exactly what happened. Goldberg watched the timeline in real time. The chat said 1:45 p.m. and at 1:55 p.m. explosions lit up Sana'a. Minutes later, President Trump posted, decisive and powerful military action. Boom. Message received, Iran-backed Houthis got the wake-up call and the world saw it happen. The media is spinning this like it's a scandal, but what if it's not a blunder? What if it was a calculated leak to show that America is back in charge? No red lines, no slow-walked diplomacy, just raw deterrence. That would track with the Trump doctrine: peace through strength and strength through action. You don't just warn your enemies with a press conference. You let them hear the boom and then let the press confirm it. And then here comes Crockett, dragging the conversation down into race and gender politics. Nobody blamed women or people of color for any of this. This wasn't about identity. It was about national defense. But Democrats can't ever engage with the substance of a policy. They have to make it about vibes. Meanwhile, her own party has spent the last decade leaking classified intel left and right, whether it was Hillary's bathroom server or the Russia collusion hoax cooked up with help from the press. So what Crockett is doing here is classic rhetorical misdirection. Introduce identity grievances to a conversation about security. No evidence, no argument, just vibes and volume. It's meant to shut down scrutiny and change the subject. And that's exactly why people are tired of this kind of clown show she's putting on. Because while the left cries about mean Signal chats, the Trump administration is taking action, targeting real threats in Yemen, putting Iran on notice, and showing the world that America's military muscle isn't on standby, it's in motion. And whether this leak was meant to disrupt or demonstrate, whatever it was, it worked. The Houthis heard it, Tehran heard it, and now thanks to the Atlantic's favorite reporter, everyone else heard it. Funny how that works, huh? And moving right along on our idiot exhibit, here we have Maxine Waters doing what she does best: being an idiot.
If he wants to start looking so closely to find those who were born here and their parents were undocumented, maybe he ought to first look at Melania. We don't know whether or not her parents were documented. And maybe we'd better just take a look.
Oh, look, Maxine Waters is back at it again, swinging wild, missing hard, and confusing sound bites with substance. This time, she's decided the best way to fight back against border enforcement is to threaten to deport the First Lady. Yes, seriously. That's where we are now, folks. Political tantrums dressed up as immigration policy. Now, Waters leads off saying, we don't know whether or not Melania's parents were documented, and maybe we better just take a look. That's not an argument. That's a fishing expedition, and a sloppy one at that. This is what's known as guilt by association. The idea that if Melania's parents might have had an unclear immigration path, that somehow justifies blanket opposition to enforcing existing immigration law. It's not just logically incoherent, it's also desperate. Melania Trump is a naturalized U.S. citizen. She went through the process legally, obtaining her green card in 2001 and citizenship in 2006. And yes, she used the EB-1 visa, also known as the Einstein visa, controversial maybe, but entirely legal. As for her parents, Victor and Malaya Navs, they were granted green cards and then U.S. citizenship in 2018 through family-based sponsorship, and again, legal. If Maxine has an issue with chain migration, that's a fair policy debate. But trying to retroactively deport people because you don't like who their daughter married, that's not governance. It's an emotional revenge fantasy dressed up as moral clarity. Now, Waters is also employing a rhetorical bait and switch here. She starts by pretending to engage with the immigration debate, specifically the Trump administration's enforcement of birthright citizenship and targeting of undocumented immigrants. But instead of addressing that issue, she shifts into petty personal attacks, classic ad hominem. Can't refute the policy? Go after someone's wife. This is playground logic, not policy making. And let's not ignore the irony. Maxine Waters, a sitting U.S. Congresswoman, is now openly suggesting we use government power to investigate and potentially remove the former First Lady over unsubstantiated speculation about her parents' visa status. Imagine if a Republican said the same thing about Michelle Obama's family. The media would be demanding resignations before the segment ended. And let's be real, this isn't even about immigration. It's about revenge. Waters doesn't care about Melania's paperwork. She cares about headlines. This is the same woman who, in 2018, told a crowd to confront Trump officials at restaurants, gas stations, and department stores. Her political brand is chaos, loud, unfocused, and untethered from facts. Now, if we want to talk immigration, that's great. Let's talk about the nearly 10 million illegal crossings since Joe Biden took office. Let's talk about the 169 no terrorists caught at the border in 2023 alone. Let's talk about the literal national security threat posed by a porous border that cartels, traffickers, and foreign operatives exploited for nearly 4 years. But Maxine Waters doesn't want that conversation because it requires facts, not feelings. So no, Maxine, you don't get to wrap a personal vendetta in the flag and call it patriotism. This isn't about policy, it's about politics. Vindictive, identity-obsessed, grievance-fueled politics. And the only thing more tired than your talking points is the media pretending this is some bold stance for justice. So here's a thought. Instead of targeting legal immigrants because of who they're married to, maybe focus on fixing the crisis your party helped create. Until then, leave the deportation fantasies at the door. This isn't The View, it's Congress. Act like it. And speaking of unhinged, there's a video going viral of leftist activists at a Bernie Sanders rally in Colorado, and oh wow, these people have truly lost touch with reality.
Beheaded Donald Trump, are you calling for his death?
I am, yes. I believe it's time that the people straight cut his fucking head off.
Mine says, if you want to know how fascism ends, ask Benito Mussolini.
And they hung him, right?
Yep, they hung him by his feet from a lamppost. That's exactly what every fascist deserves. The only good fascist is a dead fascist.
Now, are you calling for that to happen to our president right now?
I believe that the minute that Donald Trump decided to start ignoring judicial orders, he gave up the right to be the rightful president of the United States. He's an enemy of the nation, and yes, I'd like to see him hung by his feet by a lamppost.
But you wouldn't necessarily call for violence, would you? Are you supporting violence?
I think there's the people in power, that's all they're going to listen to at this point. I feel like we've done the rallies, we've done all these things, and they don't listen, and that was something that finally got people to listen. So I personally don't But if that's what we need to do for people to listen, then that's what we need to do.
Ah, yes. The party of decency, democracy, and healing is back on the campaign trail, this time in Denver, openly fantasizing about political executions. And they're not even subtle about it. At a rally featuring AOC and Bernie Sanders, we've got not one, not two, but three. Actually, if you watch the full 11-minute video, several separate speakers who casually and explicitly called for the death of Donald Trump and other members of his administration. One wanted him beheaded, another invoked Mussolini's corpse strung from a lamppost, and a third admitted that violence might be the only way to get people to listen. Now, let's be crystal clear. This isn't some random Twitter thread or unhinged Reddit post. This is on the ground, in public, at a political rally for two of the Democrat Party's biggest names. And yet, we're told Trump is a threat to democracy, that he inspires violence. No, this is the left mainstreaming political bloodlust and trying to pass it off as righteous resistance. Now let's start with the rhetoric. A beheaded Donald Trump, hung by his feet. That's what every fascist deserves. These aren't metaphors. This is explicit incitement. This is what the left would call stochastic terrorism if it were coming from anyone wearing a red hat. But when it's aimed at Trump, suddenly it's just passion or frustration. Funny how that works, huh? And let's not pretend this is just isolated venting. These talking points, Trump as a fascist, Trump as an enemy of the people, are deliberately seeded by Democrat leadership, echoed by left-wing media, and weaponized by activists to justify extreme rhetoric. You don't go from democracy dies in darkness to cut off his head without a lot of academic, journalistic, and political scaffolding holding that fantasy up. This is the logic of political violence masquerading as justice. The second activist outright says it. The only good fascist is a dead fascist. That line is lifted straight out of a far-left propaganda dating back to the Red Terror. And they apply that label, fascist, liberally to anyone who dares to oppose open borders, forced equity quotas, or vaccine mandates. It's not a descriptor, it's a license to kill handed out by people who think their ideology makes them morally untouchable. Now here's a kicker. When pressed on whether they were actually advocating for violence, the third speaker gives the most telling answer of all. They say, I personally don't, and then immediately contradicts themselves, saying, but if that's what we need to do, then that's what we need to do. That's the coward conditional. I don't support violence unless it works. It's not just morally bankrupt, it's historically illiterate. Because let's talk about Mussolini for a second. You want to invoke Italy in 1945? Fine. Mussolini wasn't just a fascist. He was a wartime dictator who oversaw mass executions, jailed dissenters, and partnered with Hitler to invade North Africa and suppress Europe. Comparing that to a twice-elected U.S. president who just returned to office through a democratic election less than 4 months ago is not just false, it's grotesque. Trump didn't jail Bernie. He didn't ban MSNBC. He didn't outlaw the DNC. He didn't cancel elections. He ran, he won, and now he's governing under the same constitution as before. He tweets. He enforces immigration law. That's not fascism. It's just politics you don't like. Grow up. But this is what happens when you condition people to believe that their political opponents are literal Nazis. Eventually, someone's going to act on that belief. And if the left doesn't condemn this in full, then they own it. Silence is complicity, right? And let's remember, this is the same crowd that had a national meltdown over January 6th, despite Trump specifically calling for peaceful protest in his speech. They said words are violence. They said rhetoric leads to insurrection. Well, where's that energy now? Because chanting for the lynching of the sitting president sure sounds like insurrectionist rhetoric to me. So spare us with this framing that all of this is about justice or defending democracy. This is about hatred, pure and simple. This is what happens when your political worldview is built on dehumanizing everyone who disagrees with you. And the fact that this happened at a rally for sitting members of Congress without a single condemnation tells you everything you need to know. At the end of the day, the real threat to democracy isn't coming from people waving American flags. It's coming from the people demanding the guillotines. So here's the real question. When did politics become so infected with rage that fantasizing about executions is met with applause instead of outrage? What does this say about a movement when its loudest voices aren't calling for debate but for blood? If this is what justice looks like now, violent rhetoric, dehumanization, and moral immunity for your side, then maybe it's time to ask who the real threat to democracy is. You don't have to like Trump. You don't have to support every policy of his. But if you can't see the danger in normalizing political violence just because it targets someone you oppose, you're not paying attention. You're participating. The next time someone claims to be fighting fascism, ask yourself, are they defending democracy or destroying it from within under the guise of virtue? You tell me what you think in the comments down below. Have a terrific day. Peace.